Have you ever opened a door, only to discover your entire life had already ended on the other side? I have. And that door was the kitchen window of my daughter-in-law's house. I remember that day clearly, so clearly that every time I think about it, my heart still tightens. That morning was peaceful to the point of cruelty. Pale sunlight lay across the little road leading to Claire's house, my daughter-in-law. A perfectly ordinary morning for a perfectly ordinary woman. If I had known what was waiting for me, I would have turned the car around the moment I entered the street. I didn't call ahead. I never did. I always believed that family didn't need formalities. To me, Claire wasn't just my daughter-in-law, she was the girl I once believed would bring happiness to my son. That morning, I woke earlier than usual. I baked the apple pie Claire loved the most. When I took it out of the oven, I even smiled the warm, gentle kind of smile you only give to someone you truly care about. God, if I had known the truth waiting for me, I wouldn't have smiled like that. The road to her house was quiet. Her home looked beautiful as always. The white fence, the little swing on the porch, the geraniums swaying in the breeze. A picture-perfect scene, like a family magazine cover. How foolish I was. I really believed all of it. But then I saw it. Frank's silver SUV, my husband's car, parked right in front of my daughter-in-law's porch. My hand tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Frank said he had a meeting with partners today. He never said he was coming to Claire's house. And Frank had never come here alone. I sat in the car for a full minute. I couldn't breathe. My mind tried to find excuses. Maybe he stopped by for something. Maybe Claire needed help. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But some truths, a woman's heart knows before her mind does. I opened the car door, stepped out. Every crunch of gravel under my feet felt like a fist pounding on my chest. I walked around to the back of the house because I didn't want to interrupt them, and because I was terrified of facing the truth head-on. Laughter. I heard laughter before I even reached the window. Soft, intimate laughter. And then, I heard my husband. I stood right under the kitchen window, and in that moment, my life shattered like a glass thrown onto the floor. Claire's voice soft as silk, but sharp underneath. "You're late. I thought maybe your wife was keeping you busy." Then Frank's low laugh, a sound I hadn't heard in years. "Don't start, Claire. You know how careful we have to be. If your son ever finds out, we're done." My son, my husband, my daughter-in-law, the three people I spent my entire life loving, and I stood outside like a fool, watching my own family from the outside. The apple pie slipped from my hands, hitting the ground with a soft, cruel thud. I didn't pick it up. I didn't do anything. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there, letting the truth slice into me over and over. If this story touches your heart, please remember you are not alone. Share your feelings in the comments, and tell me, where are you listening from? Comment your city or country. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie so you never miss the real family revenge stories where every tear holds a lesson about trust, betrayal, and awakening. Some pains don't make a sound. They just sit there quietly, like a deep cut that forces you to learn how to breathe again. That was me after standing beneath my daughter-in-law's window. I don't remember how I drove home. I only remember sitting in my kitchen, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. The apple pie was gone. The smell of butter and cinnamon still clung to my clothes, a cruel reminder that I had gone there. With kindness. But what I brought home was a truth strong enough to kill a marriage. I didn't cry. Strangely, no tears fell. Only one thing fell inside me, my heart, and it fell so slowly that I could hear something crack deep inside my chest. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, hours, maybe. The light in the room shifted from gold to white, then faded as afternoon fell. I stayed there, like someone waiting for an explanation that would never come. The house was painfully silent. Near noon, My phone rang. My son's name lit up the screen. I stared at it. For a long time, I wanted to answer, wanted to say Mom is okay, or scream that I had just seen both his marriage and his future being destroyed by the two people he trusted most. But my lips couldn't move. I let the phone ring until it stopped. In the afternoon, I wandered around the house like a shadow. I passed the living room, our family photos still hung neatly on the wall. Frank's smiling face in one picture made my throat tighten. We once had such a beautiful life that I believed nothing could break it. Foolish. I walked to the bedroom. The familiar room, the bed where we had slept for more than 20 years. I touched the blanket still warm from the night before. A woman can endure many things: poverty, sickness, sacrifice, age. But betrayal? No. Not ordinary betrayal. Betrayal with her own daughter-in-law, and whispering that they had to hide it from my son. Those words echoed in my head like a ship sinking slowly. By evening, when the sky turned violet, I remembered that Frank would be home soon. I heard his keys in the lock. I didn't know if I had the strength to face him. He walked in like any other day, brushed off his jacket, set his bag down. And what hurt more than any words was, he didn't notice a thing. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. A light, mechanical kiss without any emotion. But to me, that kiss carried the scent of Claire's perfume. The perfume I had bought her last Christmas. I froze. Frank didn't notice. He opened the fridge, grabbed a drink, and asked, "You okay? You look a little tired." Tired? I was dying inside, and he thought I looked tired? I simply said, "I'm fine." 2 short words. And he believed them. He really believed I knew nothing. That hurt even more. That night, I heard him shower, watch TV, laugh softly at something. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the distance between us grow inch by inch. When he finally lay beside me and fell asleep, breathing peacefully, the peaceful breath of a man who had cheated in the morning and returned home at night like nothing happened, I turned to look at him. The face of the man I once loved enough to forgive anything. But now I saw only one thing. He was not afraid of losing me. That was the moment I began to change. I didn't sleep that night. I got up, put on my robe, and sat in the dark living room. I looked around the house, every object, the vase, the carpet, the chair I picked out, the tablecloth I sewed myself. Every part of this house carried my years of effort, my youth, my devotion. But somehow, it didn't belong to me anymore. I exhaled. A long, heavy breath, as if releasing something deep inside, and then I realized, from the moment I heard their voices under that window, I was no longer the woman I used to be. Beside me, the clock ticked. I watched the seconds pass. Then suddenly, I knew what I needed to do. Not revenge, not rage, but survival. I stood up, took a small notebook from the drawer, opened the first page, and wrote things I need to take back in my life. Under it, I listed each item Frank had controlled for years: bank accounts, house contract, his company, insurance, tax documents, financial records, original transactions between the two of them. When I reached the 10th line, my hand stopped. I looked at my handwriting, shaky and crooked, but still clear. I felt like I was looking at a new woman forming in the dark. A clear-headed woman, a woman who had stopped crying, a woman who had started to ask what she truly deserved. Around 3 a.m., I went back to the bedroom. Frank was still fast asleep. He had no idea that on that very night, a new life of mine had already begun. I lay down, watching the streetlight filter through the curtains and spread across the ceiling. And for the first time in many years, I saw clearly that my future no longer depended on my husband. It depended on me, and on the truth I was about to bring into the light. And I made a promise to myself right then: I will not let them destroy anything else. If this part touches a pain or an awakening inside you, please share those feelings. And tell me, where are you listening from? Leave the name of your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie so you don't miss real family revenge stories where women find their strength again after the cruelest betrayals. When a woman stops crying, that's when the whole world should start being careful with her. That was me the next morning, when the sun wasn't even fully awake yet. I woke up while Frank was still sleeping. His steady breathing came from behind me, gentle, as if we were living in a normal marriage. A marriage with no secrets, no betrayal, no whispered words under my daughter-in-law's kitchen window. I sat up very slowly, afraid to disturb anything. Strangely, I didn't want to wake him up, but not because I cared. It was because I didn't want to face the face of the man who had destroyed my trust with just one sentence. If your son ever finds out. I stepped out of bed, my feet freezing when they touched the floor. Maybe it was because I hadn't slept at all. Or maybe it was because, from that moment on, I had stepped into a completely different life. That morning, I didn't make coffee for Frank like I always did. I didn't toast bread, didn't cut fruit, didn't ask what he wanted to eat. I just stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at my shadow on the floor, a thin, rigid shadow that no longer shook. I started with the piece of paper I wrote on the night before. Things to take back. I stared at that list for a long time. For the first time in many years, I felt like I was getting ready for a battle. But it wasn't a battle to take revenge on them. It was a battle to reclaim what should have been mine. Because if a woman does not protect herself, no one will do it for her. I called a law office. A young female voice answered, "Michael's law office. How can I help you?" I said my name, and my voice trembled a little. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew this was the first step, the step that would change my life forever. She said I could come in the afternoon. I agreed. I drove there while the sky was still soft and bright. The office was small, a bit old, but it felt solid, like the kind of place that still respected its own ethics. Michael was in his early 40s. His eyes had the calm look of someone who had seen too many broken lives and no longer panicked by them. He invited me to sit. I set my bag down, my hands slightly shaking, not from fear, but because this was the first time I had ever told my story out loud. When I got to the part about standing under Claire's kitchen window, I heard my own voice drop. When I repeated what Frank had said, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. When I told him they were afraid my son would find out, I saw Michael narrow his eyes, not because he was surprised, but because he understood. This wasn't just about cheating. This was betrayal of family, betrayal of morals, and betrayal of finances. When I finished, Michael put his pen down and leaned back in his chair. "Do you want a divorce?" That question hit my chest like a stone. I was silent for almost a minute. What did I want? Revenge? To leave? To fight back? To end it? Finally, I asked, "If I divorce him, will I lose everything?" He answered very directly, "If you don't prepare well, that's very likely, because all the finances are currently under your husband's name." I closed my eyes. I had trusted Frank so much that I let him manage everything. I used to think men were better with money. I used to think that if I loved him and took care of him, he would protect me. I was wrong, terribly, stupidly wrong. When I opened my eyes, I said, "I want to know what rights I have, and I want to know the truth about those accounts." Michael nodded. "Then you need evidence. And you need it soon, before he has time to move anything." Evidence. I had already thought of that the night before, and now it became my mission. He gave me a list of documents I needed. I wrote down every line, carefully, like a student copying notes. On the drive home, I realized my hands were no longer shaking. Maybe because for the first time in years, I was doing something for myself. When I got home, Frank wasn't there yet. I stood in front of his office, the room that was always locked, the room he had never allowed me to enter. I could hear my own heartbeat, slow, then fast, then slow again. I searched the drawer in the hallway. The key was still there, hidden behind an old picture frame of our son. I had hidden it there almost 10 years ago. I don't know why I hid it back then. Maybe some part of me knew I would need it one day. I held the key, stood in front of the office door, took a deep breath. The door opened. The familiar smell rushed out, the smell of paper, wood, and the cologne Frank always used. Everything in the room was unusually tidy, too clean, too organized, too careful. I opened the filing cabinet. Every drawer was labeled. Every folder had a name. But there was one gray folder with no label. It was pushed deep into the last drawer. My hand trembled slightly as I pulled it out. Inside were printed emails, not work emails. Emails between Frank and Claire. I turned each page. Every page felt like another stab. And then I saw it. A short email, but enough to rip apart the rest of my heart. The transfer needs to go through by the end of the quarter, or your husband will notice. Your husband, Claire's husband, my son. Not only had they betrayed me, not only were they having an affair, they were also moving money out of the family business, moving it from the joint account into Claire's personal account. I sat down in the chair. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't break anything. I just felt empty. Empty in the most frightening way. No more pain, only cold. But in the middle of that cold, I felt something ignite inside me, a small spark, the spark of awakening. I took out my phone. I photographed each page. I noted every detail, careful, like someone defusing a bomb. That night, Frank came home later than usual. When I looked at him, I realized I was no longer the same. I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. And for the first time in my life, I knew I could fight back. If this part 3 makes you feel the strength of a woman pushed to the edge, please share how you feel. And please tell me, where are you listening from? Leave your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie so you don't miss real family revenge stories where women rise from the very place they thought they had fallen for good. When the betrayer starts to feel afraid, they don't choose to apologize. They choose to threaten. That's what I learned in the days after I opened the door to Frank's office. That evening, Frank came home later than usual. I was sitting in the living room, lights off, only the weak glow of the street lamp shining on the wall. The whole house was filled with a silence, stretched tight like a string. Frank walked in, his breath carrying a light smell of alcohol. He looked at me, surprised to see I was still awake. "You're not asleep yet?" he asked, his voice calm, as if it were any other day. I looked straight at him, for a very long time. Then I said only one sentence. I couldn't sleep. He didn't notice anything strange in my eyes. He was still the same man, confident, smooth, too used to me never questioning him. But what he didn't know was that I was no longer that woman. In the dark, I saw one thing clearly. From the moment I opened that office door, the balance of power between us had shifted. The next morning, I made breakfast like usual. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed him to keep his routine so I could continue doing what I had to do. Frank sat down, opened his newspaper. While he casually bit into his toast, I thought, how can someone eat so comfortably after betraying his own family? Near the end of the meal, Frank looked up and stared at me for a long moment. Then he asked, in a completely ordinary tone, "Is something wrong? You seem different lately." Different? If he knew what I had read in his office last night, he would understand why. I just smiled. Nothing. Frank narrowed his eyes, but then let it go. That told me one very clear thing. He was afraid of my silence but not yet ready to face it. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hello, Marilyn?" It was Claire's voice. I froze for a few seconds. I could almost smell her perfume again on Frank's collar. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." There was a long silence. Then Claire spoke in that trembling tone. I knew too well the kind of trembling you practice. "Please. The other day was a mistake." Frank said. "I don't care what Frank said." I cut her off. Here is the full English translation in a clear, emotional, easy-to-follow style. Claire took a deep breath. "Marilyn, if this comes out, your son will know. Hell blame both of us. I'm just trying to protect him." I almost laughed. Protect him? Someone who can betray her own husband dares to say she's protecting him? "You should protect yourself instead," I said. "Because when this all comes to light, you'll be the one left with nothing." This time, Claire couldn't hide her panic. Her voice shrank until it almost disappeared into the phone. "Marilyn, please don't destroy everything." I answered with just one sentence. "I don't have to do anything, Claire. You two are doing that yourselves." And I hung up. The next day, before it was fully dark, there was a knock at the door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Frank. And Claire standing behind him. Two people no longer hiding. Frank forced a stiff smile. "We need to talk." "No," I said. "I don't need to say anything to either of you." He glanced around, probably afraid the neighbors would hear. "Marilyn, don't make this bigger than it is. There are a lot of things you don't understand." I folded my arms, standing still. "Then help me understand." Claire stepped forward, her voice soft, eyes filled with tears, a performance I was now immune to. "Please, Marilyn. It's not what you think. Frank, he needs me." I turned to Frank. "Is she right? Do you need her?" Frank pressed his lips together. For the first time, I saw a flash of real fear in his eyes. "This is very complicated," he said. I laughed a dry, empty laugh. "No, it's very simple. You two betrayed this family. You betrayed my son. You betrayed your vows." Claire cut in, her voice rising. "We didn't steal anything. We just borrowed. Just temporarily." I frowned. "You borrowed both my husband and my son's money at the same time?" Claire's face went pale. Frank snapped, frustrated. "Marilyn, what are you trying to do? Destroy this family yourself? Family?" I looked at the two people standing at my door, a cheater and a thief, both of them clinging to each other so they wouldn't drown. I spoke softly, but every word was like a cold blade. This family died the morning I stood under her kitchen window. Frank stepped forward, his voice lower. "You don't know what you're up against. You'd better stop." I looked straight into his eyes. "No, you're the one who needs to stop." The air froze in that moment. Frank frowned, sighed, then turned away. Claire shot me a poisonous look. "You'll regret this," I replied. "I've regretted the last 15 years for believing you were like a daughter to me." "I'm done regretting." They left. I closed the door. And in the dark, I realized the thing they feared most wasn't my anger. It was my silence. Because silence is the sign of preparation, and preparation is the beginning of their ending. That night, I opened my laptop. I went through every photo of the documents. I numbered each file. I compared every email. I marked every suspicious transfer. I worked like someone who had just woken up from a lifetime of sleep. No more fear. No more shaking. No more weakness. Only the truth. And me. I knew one thing very clearly. They were starting to lose control, and I was the one holding the pieces of their little game, and I had absolutely no intention of letting them win. Not this time. Not ever again. If this part reminds you of the moment you had to stand up and protect yourself, please share that feeling. And please tell me, where are you listening from? Which city? Which country in the world? Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie so you don't miss real family revenge stories where women find themselves again in the ruins they once thought they'd never rise from. When a woman starts collecting the truth, it's no longer a tragedy. It's preparation for a battle the betrayer will never be ready to face. That was me, after the night Frank and Claire stood at my door, trying to use both tears and threats to break me. They didn't know that their panic was exactly what made me stronger. I spent the whole next day reorganizing my desk. Not to make it pretty, but to turn it into my battlefield. I placed my notebook in the center of the table. The first page, things to take back. The second page, things they've done. The third page, what I can prove. Then I began to write, each stroke firm and clear. Every line was another nail in the coffin of Frank and Claire. I reviewed every photo of the documents from Frank's office. Each email was a piece of evidence. Each transfer was a trap they had set for themselves. Each line showed me one more thing. I wasn't just betrayed. They were trying to steal my son's future. When I thought of my son, my chest tightened. He still called me every night. But I couldn't tell him. I couldn't break his heart before I knew I could protect him. My son did not deserve to be dragged into the mud those two had created. That afternoon, I got a call from Michael, the lawyer. Have you looked over the documents I sent? I'm going through them, I said. Good. But Marilyn, you have to be prepared. This won't be simple. Once he realizes you're gathering evidence, he'll push back. I was quiet for a moment, then answered, I'm not afraid of Frank anymore. Michael let out a small sigh, the kind of sigh from someone who knows their client has already crossed the point of no return. Then I want to see you tomorrow morning. Bring everything you found, I agreed. I spent the entire night sorting documents. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't rage. I just focused. It's strange. When humans are pushed to a corner, they can discover a completely new version of themselves. I, a woman who had spent years in the kitchen, cleaning, caring for her husband, was now analyzing cash flows, comparing statements, finding irregularities like a professional investigator. I felt myself becoming someone I once thought I could never be, and I liked that woman. The next morning, I brought a thick stack of documents to Michael's office. He looked at me for a long moment, as if to confirm that I truly was ready. You gathered all this in just 2 days? He asked, slightly stunned. Yes, I answered. Michael nodded, with a kind of respect. Frank will never expect this level of preparation. A chill went down my spine, not from fear, but from the clear understanding that the real war had begun. When I got home, it was still light outside. I opened the door and saw Frank already sitting at the dining table. His whiskey glass had only a thin layer left, but his eyes were redder than usual. Where have you been all morning? He asked directly. I hung up my coat and replied calmly, Out. With who? He shot back like an arrow. That's not your business. Frank stood up and walked toward me. His eyes were no longer soft or pretending to care. They were full of suspicion and a hint of fear. What are you hiding? He asked, his voice dropping. I looked straight at him. You're the one who's been hiding things from me. A flicker of shock crossed his face. Just a second. But enough for me to know he understood that I knew something. Frank stepped back, sat down again, and leaned on the table. His voice was low, dangerous. Marilyn, you don't know what you're doing. You're putting yourself in a very bad position. I leaned on the other side of the table. And where are you putting me? In the place where you and my daughter-in-law are moving money together? Frank froze. I could hear the whiskey glass tremble. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the emails, about the strange transfers, about how you betrayed this family and our son. Frank shot up from his chair, almost knocking it over. You went into my office? I answered, perfectly calm. I went into my husband's office, in my house, to find what you've been hiding. His eyes went bloodshot with anger, but underneath it was fear. You're going to blow this whole family apart, he shouted. I looked at him, quietly, for a few seconds. Then I said, no. You and Claire did that. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage. Frank raised his hand as if to say something, then dropped it. He exhaled, his hands trembling slightly. It was the first time I'd ever seen him look weak. He stammered, "Stop this, Marilyn. I'm begging you. Don't let this go too far." Begging? The man who used to be so confident, so arrogant, so sure he controlled everything, was now begging me. I shook my head. It's too late. Frank stared at me, for a long, long time, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen in our entire marriage: desperation. He turned away, grabbed his coat, picked up his keys, and left the house. The door closed with a loud, echoing click, and I knew. From that moment on, Frank and Claire would do anything to save themselves. They would run, hide, attack, lie. And me? I was moving forward, and I was done looking back. That night, I opened my notebook again. First page, things to take back. Second page, things they've done. Third page, what I can prove. The fourth page, the one I added that night, read, things they are about to face. I smiled and closed the notebook. For the first time in a very long time, I wasn't breathing through pain anymore. I was breathing through willpower. If this part makes your heart tremble at the strength of a woman pushed to the edge, please share how it made you feel. And please tell me, where are you listening from? Write your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie so you don't miss real family revenge stories where every woman finds her strength again after the most painful betrayals. Some trials don't just judge guilt. They strip away the masks of people who thought they would always stand above everyone else. And that hearing day was the day Frank and Claire's truth was dragged out into the light with nowhere left to hide. That morning was so cold I felt like even the sun was reluctant to show up and witness a family fall apart. I stood in front of the city hall, clutching the file in my hands, my palms cold and damp, not sure if it was from the morning air or from the determination rising in my chest until it was hard to breathe. Lawyer Michael walked up beside me, his voice low and steady. "Are you ready?" I looked at the big doors in front of us. The place where every word, every paper, every tear, if there were any, would become evidence. "I've been ready since the day I stood under Claire's kitchen window," I said. Michael nodded, and we walked in together. The courtroom wasn't crowded that day, but the air felt heavy, like someone had dropped a boulder on everyone's chest. Frank was already there. His suit was neatly pressed, tie perfectly straight, face carrying the calm of a man used to being believed. But his eyes were no longer calm. There was fear buried in them, like someone who knew the game he created had finally come to collect its price. Claire sat beside him, clutching a tissue, her eyes shimmering with tears that hadn't fallen yet. She wore a pale beige dress, the kind of color people choose when they want to look harmless. When I walked in, Claire glanced at me. A thin glance, half pity, half fear, half resentment, but I didn't respond. I didn't come to watch her perform. I came to end this. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. Michael spoke first. His voice was clear, each word like a blade placed exactly where it needed to be: steady, calm, precise. "Your Honor, we would like to present evidence that Mr. Frank Walker and Mrs. Claire Henderson coordinated unauthorized transfers of funds from a joint business account into a personal account under Mrs. Henderson's name." I saw Frank flinch. Clearly, he hadn't expected me to dig that deep. Michael placed each bank statement on the evidence table, page by page, number by number, line by line. Each document sounded like a hammer hitting metal. Claire shifted in her seat, her hand trembling. Frank leaned back, pretending to be calm, but his spine was rigid like stone. Michael went on, "We also submit emails showing intimate exchanges between Mr. Walker and Mrs. Henderson, including specific plans for the transfers, dates, and their concern that Mrs. Henderson's husband might find out." The courtroom went completely silent. The judge raised an eyebrow. Claire turned pale. Frank's grip tightened on the arm of his chair so much I could hear the faint creak of wood. Michael placed another stack of papers on the table. "These are the full email chains." The judge skimmed a few pages, then gave a small nod. Not a nod of agreement, a nod to the weight of the truth. Frank shot to his feet. "This is fabricated," he shouted, voice shaking. "My wife is trying to destroy my life. These emails prove nothing." Michael didn't flinch. He replied calmly. The emails were obtained from Mr. Walker's personal folder, located in the home office shared by both parties. There are no signs of tampering. That was when Claire started crying. Tears fell at the perfect moment, at the perfect pace, in the perfect style of a victim. "Marilyn, please." She turned toward me. I never wanted it to turn out like this. I looked straight at her. "What did you want? To keep moving the money? Or to keep sleeping with my husband?" The room shook, not literally, but everyone felt it. No one spoke, but everyone heard the sound of the truth hitting the floor. Frank growled, "You're making a fool of yourself, Marilyn." I turned to the judge. "I'm not making anything. I'm just telling the truth." The judge tapped the gavel lightly. "Order." Michael continued, his voice even firmer now. "We also submit written notes recording meetings between Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Walker at private locations, which explains why Mr. Walker's vehicle was repeatedly seen at Mrs. Henderson's residence during business hours." Claire gasped through her tears. "That's just personal. It has nothing to do with this case." Michael turned to her. "Personal, yet discussed in the same email threads as shared company finances. Your Honor, this demonstrates a clear mixing of personal affairs and financial misconduct." Frank jumped up again. "Enough! That's enough! No one here understands what's really going on." The judge fixed his eyes on him. "Mr. Walker, if you interrupt again, I will have you removed from this courtroom." Frank sat down, face flushed, hands trembling. When Michael finished his presentation, the courtroom fell silent. Then the judge spoke, his voice firm but emotionless. "I have heard enough and seen enough to make a preliminary ruling." Frank's eyes widened. Claire held her breath. I felt my own heart skip a beat. The judge raised the gavel. His words rang out clearly. "The court temporarily rules in favor of the plaintiff, Mrs. Marilyn Walker. All shared assets are to be frozen pending further investigation. The accounts involved in unauthorized transfers are to be closed. Mrs. Claire Henderson is hereby suspended from all rights and involvement related to the company." Claire burst into loud sobs, her face twisted. Frank stood frozen like stone, his ability to perform and pretend completely gone. I simply closed my eyes, not happy, not triumphant, just lighter. Lighter, like someone who had been carrying a boulder for years and finally put it down. The hearing ended. People stood and walked out. Footsteps echoed on the stone floor. I rose slowly. Michael gently touched my shoulder. "You did well," he said. I nodded. I just stood still and let the truth do its job. When I stepped out of City Hall, the sun was soft, not warm, but the kind of light that exposes things, the light of truth, that shows everything people tried to hide. Frank hurried after me, his voice low, almost threatening. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" I turned and looked straight into the face of the man I had loved for half my life. "I don't think anything," I replied. "I only know one thing. You pushed yourself here." Frank clenched his fists. Claire stepped out of the car, mascara smeared, eyes full of hatred as if I was the one who had ruined her life. "You'll pay for this," Claire said. I met her gaze. I had carried this look all through the hearing, the look of a woman who no longer fears anything. "No, Claire, you're the one who will pay." And I walked away, without looking back, without needing to, because the people behind me had already lost everything. If this part made you feel the power of truth, please share how it touched you. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Leave your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay so you don't miss real family revenge stories where women rise from ruins and show the world their true worth. When the betrayer realizes they can't win with truth, they will try to win with cowardice. And what happened after that hearing showed me another face of Frank and Claire, not secret lovers anymore, but two desperate people trying everything to drag me down with them. From the day the court issued its temporary ruling, my house felt strange. No more footsteps from Frank. No more scent of his cologne. No more keys turning in the lock at midnight. Just me, the old clock on the wall, and the silence. But this time, the silence didn't hurt. It cleared my mind. It was the third morning after the hearing. I was sitting at the table, reviewing documents, when there was a knock on the door. A soft knock. Not rushed, not aggressive, not like Frank pounding the door in anger. I glanced out the window. It was Elaine. And what happened after that hearing showed me another face of Frank and Claire, not secret lovers anymore, but two desperate people trying everything to drag me down with them. From the day the court issued its temporary ruling, my house felt strange. No more footsteps from Frank, no more scent of his cologne, no more keys turning in the lock at midnight. Just me, the old clock on the wall, and the silence. But this time, the silence didn't hurt. It cleared my mind. It was the third morning after the hearing. I was sitting at the table, reviewing documents, when there was a knock on the door. A soft knock, not rushed, not aggressive, not like Frank pounding the door in anger. I glanced out the window. It was Elaine. Thinking about her words, a simple sentence, but truer than any advice. We talked for a long while, then Elaine looked at me more seriously. "But Marilyn, I have to ask, are you sure Frank and Claire won't try anything else?" I looked out the window, where the light reflected off the glass of water on the table. "No, I'm not sure. And that's exactly why I have to keep preparing." Elaine nodded, as if she had already expected that answer. That evening, after I closed the door behind Elaine, I noticed something small but strange. There was a car parked exactly 2 houses down. Its interior lights were off. I stood there for a moment, listening. No one got out, no sound. But I knew I was being watched. Maybe it was Frank, maybe Claire, maybe someone they hired. I wasn't afraid. I just felt tired of their pettiness. I pulled the curtains closed, turned on all the lights, and went back to sorting documents like nothing had happened. If they wanted to see me scared, they were going to be disappointed. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Mrs. Marilyn Walker?" "Yes." "This is Officer Hayes. We received another report claiming you've been harassing your daughter-in-law." I closed my eyes. Again. This time, I wasn't surprised. I asked, "What did they say?" "They said you've been driving around their house, sending threatening messages, and that you may intend to harm Mrs. Henderson." I laughed. A short, cold, exhausted laugh. "Officer, I'm not driving around anyone's house. I barely remember which number Claire lives at because I have no reason to ever go back there." Hayes replied, "I believe you, ma'am, but we still have to file a report. This isn't the first complaint." I frowned. "Not the first?" "No. There were 2 previous anonymous reports." I said nothing for a few seconds. 2 anonymous reports, and now a third? Claire? It could only be Claire. When a thief is cornered, they don't just run, they bite. I went down to the station like they asked, to clear things up. It all went more quickly and more smoothly than I expected. Hayes apologized for the trouble and said, "You don't strike me as the type of person who would do any of this." I replied, "Thank you. But people can make up any story they want when they know they're about to lose everything." Hayes looked at me like he understood. "Ill note in the file that you fully cooperated, and there are no signs you're a danger to anyone." I nodded and walked out with my bag, but as I passed through the parking lot, I saw that same car from the other night. This time, the interior light was on, and in that light, I could clearly see a figure moving behind the tinted glass. I didn't stop. I didn't speed up. I didn't look a second time. I just thought one thing: if they think they can scare me like this, they really don't know me at all. When I got home, my phone rang. This time, it was Michael. "Marilyn, I need to talk to you right away. Something's happened." "I have something to tell you too," I answered. Michael exhaled sharply. "I just received an email from Frank's lawyer. They're preparing to ask the court to consider you mentally unstable in order to invalidate some of the evidence against them." I froze for a moment. "Mentally unstable?" "Yes. They claim you're obsessive, stressed, and trying to harm Claire." I laughed again, longer this time. A broken, circling laugh, half pain, half dark humor, until I almost couldn't breathe. Michael went on, "Don't worry. I've already submitted information to the court showing you're fully cooperative and there are no signs of any instability. But Marilyn, they're going to use even dirtier tricks." I sat down, my voice calm, almost frighteningly calm. "They want war? They'll get war." Michael was silent for a moment, then said, "I know you're strong. But please remember we work with the law, not with emotion." I replied, "I'm stronger than I've ever been." And I stopped acting on emotion the day I heard them laughing together in my son's house. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the dark by the window. Outside, that same car was still parked there. It looked like a wolf watching its prey. But this wolf had picked the wrong target. Near midnight, the car drove away. As soon as the engine sound faded, I stood up. I took my notebook. I opened a new page and wrote, "They're afraid. When bad people are afraid, they make mistakes. And I won't miss a single one of those mistakes." Then I looked around my home. Tidy, quiet, clean. No Frank, no lies. No door slamming as he left to go to another woman, just me. "And the truth," I whispered into the darkness, "your final days have begun." And for the first time in months, I smiled a real smile. Not because I was happy, but because I had finally taken myself back. If this part makes you feel the strength of a woman standing up for herself, please share how it touched you. And I truly want to know, where are you listening from? Leave your city or country in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie so you don't miss real family revenge stories where women are reborn after every wound. Sometimes, the downfall of others doesn't require us to lay a hand on them. We just have to stand still and let the truth do its work. And in the weeks that followed, I watched Frank and Claire burn their own lives down with the very things they thought would save them. Since the last time I saw that car vanish into the night, my life hasn't exactly been peaceful, but it has become clearer. Clearer about my goal. Clearer about the kind of people I'm facing. Clearer about the woman I am becoming. 3 weeks after the hearing, the air around me shifted quietly. No more knocking on my door. No more anonymous calls. No more shadowy cars outside. What did that mean? It meant Frank and Claire were preparing another move. I waited, not in fear, I waited like someone who knows a wounded animal always comes back and will be caught at the exact moment it thinks it's winning. Even the newspapers started mentioning the case, not in screaming headlines on the front page, but in small columns just enough to make Frank hide in the house for several days. I found out because an old neighbor called me. He hasn't gone outside. Some of your mutual friends are avoiding him. People are talking about Frank a lot. No one can escape the light when the truth is shining. Not even someone like Frank, who once thought he stood above everything. One Wednesday afternoon, while I was watering the plants in my backyard, my phone rang. It was Michael. "I have an update." "What is it?" I asked, my chest tightening a little. "Frank's company has opened an internal investigation. Some of the transactions linked to Claire are suspected of being illegal." I stopped watering. The water overflowed onto the ground. "Who reported it?" "Not clear," Michael said. "But my guess is a former employee of Frank's. Seems they've noticed something for a while. Just waited for the right moment to speak up." I couldn't hold back a small smile. Not a happy smile, but a relieved one, knowing that I wasn't the only one who finally saw Frank's true face. 2 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hez falling apart. It's sad if you ever thought he actually loved you." I stared at the message. No name, but the tone? I knew it. "Claire." I sighed. A long, heavy sigh, but not a painful one. She thought she could hurt me with one sentence? After everything they had done to me? I didn't reply. But I saved the message as evidence. That evening, while I was making tea, another message came in. Not from Claire, not from Frank. It was from my son. "Mom, can we talk?" I froze, my hand gripping the kettle handle so tightly it burned. My son had seen the news, heard people talk, put the pieces together. He was no longer the child I once held in my arms, and no longer the young husband being betrayed without knowing it. I knew this moment would come. I just didn't think it would come so soon. I replied, "Yes, sweetheart. Come tomorrow." The next day, my son came to the house. He walked in and stood there for a long time, looking at me like he was seeing someone he had forgotten for too long. "Mom," he said, his voice tight, I don't know where to start." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You don't need to start. Just talk." He sat down, face buried in his hands. "I saw the news. I saw the photos. I heard what people are saying. And he stopped, took a deep breath. "I don't believe it. I don't want to believe it." I stayed quiet, looking at the child I had been protecting all this time with my own pain. "Mom," he said, "Frank, Dad, did he really do all of that?" It took me a few seconds to find my voice again. "Yes," I said softly, "and I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." He looked up at me, eyes red. "No, you don't have to apologize. They are the ones who should apologize." Then he hugged me, tight, so tight, as if he was trying to make up for all the times he left me alone. For the first time, my tears fell, not from pain, but from relief. My son knew. He stood with me. I wasn't alone anymore. A few days later, everything began to collapse faster for Frank and Claire. Frank's company announced his suspension while they continued the investigation. Some accounts were completely frozen. Old friends avoided him. People he knew stopped answering his calls. And Claire? The news said she was going through a psychological crisis. A soft way of saying she couldn't handle the pressure when the truth came out. That wasn't what I wanted. I've never wished for anyone's total ruin. But I understood one thing. When you live by lies, you will fall by the truth. One afternoon, I ran into Frank by accident. At the supermarket, he had lost weight. His shirt was wrinkled. His hair had more gray. The confident look of the man who thought he stood above everyone else gone. When our eyes met, he froze, Like someone caught carrying a shame heavier than 1,000 stones. He walked toward me. "Marilyn," his voice was hoarse. I want to talk." I looked at him. Not with the eyes of a betrayed wife, not with the eyes of a woman still in love, but with the eyes of someone who had walked through everything and come out the other side. "I have nothing left to say to you," I said. Frank swallowed. "I've lost everything. You lost what you chose to burn," I replied. He sighed. "I never thought it would go this far." I looked straight into his eyes. "That's because you always thought someone else would suffer in your place." Frank stared down at the floor. I saw his shoulders drop. He was no longer my man, no longer a husband, no longer a good father. He was just a man ruined by his own choices. I turned away, leaving him standing there small, breathless, with nothing left to hold on to. That night, I sat alone in my old armchair, staring into nothing, listening to the ticking of the clock, and I realized I didn't think about them anymore. I didn't hurt because of them. I wasn't angry because of them. I didn't tremble because of them. I had found something I thought I'd never get back: peace. Not peace because they had fallen, but peace because I had stayed standing. I looked out the window. The sky was cold, but clear. The night was dark, but calm. I smiled a true smile, light and soft, like the first breath after a long, painful storm. "Finally," I whispered, "it's time for me to live for myself. If this part touches your heart, if you've ever had to rise from ruins like Marilyn, please share how you feel. And tell me, where are you listening from? Comment your city or country. Don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie Tay so you don't miss real family revenge stories where every tear turns into a woman's strength.